All motivation podcasts are strictly based on opinion. Any facts given should and will be backed up by a source. If a source is not given, then it should not be taken otherwise.
Now I'ma I get it until my numbers call. Till I'm just a name and a memory on my homies' wall. I be moving on, I'm trying to just build my dome up. Till I'm just a snake, my toes up.
Welcome to the newest episode of Motivation Inspired and the sixth episode of our series, Dating Doomed or Destined, where we're trying to decide if the dating world today is doomed or is it destined to get better. I, of course, am your host, Curtis Moore, aka Curly Mo, or, of course, you can call me Mo. And today's episode is going to be something I have talked a lot about in my other episodes and other podcasts, but I haven't really addressed it in details. Now, you are going to hear cars and things in the background because I'm actually recording this in an outside setting. So just overlook if you hear a bunch of horns and things in the background. But anyway, back to it. It is a key factor in the dating world that a lot of people don't address, but it is very much a factor. Here's a scenario. You grew up with a family that is very close. I mean, Sunday dinners, family reunions, family barbecues. Y'all play games, get along really well. Anytime there's a family function, there's a huge turnout. You leave and you move to another state. You end up going to a local restaurant and you end up meeting somebody. Now, y'all hit it off very well. Y'all swap numbers. Y'all go out on a few dates. And she or he decides, hey, we would like for you to meet the family. My family is having a barbecue, and I want you to come with me. So you agree. You both get there, and it is a big bombshell. There's only a few people there. It is very different than what you're used to. People are shooting dice. They're snorting coke, drinking alcohol, smoking weed. People are fighting. All of a sudden, someone pulls out a gun. Now you start to second guess yourself, thinking, did I make the right decision? So you look at your partner and you say, hey, what is going on? What is all of this? Your partner happens to look over at you like they are unfazed and say, oh, this is nothing. This happens all the time. This is actually one of the better ones. Nobody got hurt this time. Better get used to it. What the heck have you gotten yourself into? So, today's episode is called Different Strokes for Different Folks. That's right. Our episode is called Different Strokes because when you go to dating, things are different. Everybody is different. All relationships is different. Every individual person is different. And today we are going to touch on that. We're going to see why and how these things are different. When we start talking to someone We don't think about that person's family history or their lifestyle right away. I mean, yeah, we ask the little questions like, do you have any siblings? Are your mom and dad together? You live with your mom, you live with your dad, or y'all still in touch? Have any of them died? Those types of questions. How many kids you have? All that stuff. But honestly, on average, new dating couples don't get into the difference in the way someone has grown up or their culture or environment until they have gotten beyond the dating part of the relationship. This part could cause some setbacks. And that is pretty much true. You get so excited that you met somebody and the vibes are really good that you start going out to eat, going on dates and things like that. I mean, little stuff for the culture and stuff will come up. Obviously, if you're in an interracial relationship and things like that, but it doesn't really get that deep until you have gotten several dates in and y'all have started getting serious. So, and like I said, it could be a setback. People naturally assume that what works for one person works for others, or what works for one couple works for other couples. But the fact is, every couple is different. Every person, every individual is different. Think about it. If a 40-year-old guy from the city of New York meets a 28-year-old woman from the deep country of Alabama, it would be hard for either of them to get used to each other's lifestyles. And it happens all the time. I'm a product of that. I live in the deep country of Smithville, where it's predominantly Caucasian, and I have moved to Haven, where it's predominantly African American, and which is closer to Memphis. When I started working at Amazon, people started wondering why I sounded the way I sound. I mean, most people like it because they say I have an accent. But I mean, I guess it's the same way when I went up north to Chicago, and I like their accent. But they like the accent, or they would either say you sound so country or whatever. But look at age difference. Number one. A lot of people say age ain't nothing but a number, but a 40-year-old has most of the time has more experience with life, relationships and stuff rather than a 28-year-old. Not saying a 28-year-old doesn't go through things, because you don't know how that person has grown up. She might have had to grew up, or he might have had to grew up at a very young age, depending on the family. Then you got to look at their lifestyle. You got to look at their finances. Did they grow up in poverty, or did they grow up with a silver spoon in their mouth? Not only do we get to look at the different environments, you have to look at the age difference, like I said. You got to look at the fact that the experience level, not saying that it's like that all the time, but you can't overlook the experience levels. You can't overlook that. There are several factors that can contribute to the differences in relationships and people. And now we're going to really get down to the nitty gritty. We're going to get into the subjects that a lot of people try to avoid, but it's really unavoidable when you're dealing with relationships. The number one difference is race. That's it, race. I'm not just talking about interracial relationships. I mean, a Caucasian couple is different than an African American couple. And an African American couple is more likely different than a Puerto Rican or a Mexican couple. And a Mexican couple is different from an Asian couple. You got to look at it from that standpoint. And then obviously the interracial. If a black man dates a white woman, if a Mexican man dates an Asian woman, of course there's going to be a huge difference. That's obvious. That is obvious. But you got to look at that. And this is not being a racist or anything, but let's just get down to the serious point of the matter. Growing up, and this is me personally growing up as an African American man, I have came across a lot of things, even though it shouldn't, I don't even want to talk about it, but I have came across a lot of things in relationships because I was a black man. I have dated Caucasian women before. And of course, some of their families didn't agree with it. Abruptly didn't agree with it. Some of them didn't. And some of them didn't care. I've dated an Italian. And I've dated black women. I mean, the way that we grew up, we dealt with some things that some Caucasians haven't. I have Caucasian friends that look at me as if I was just as much like them. They didn't look at color. But they wouldn't understand what what an African American man would go through when dealing with that. Unless they have been in a situation where there was around a bunch of African American men or African American people. It feels different and weird. So, I mean, same with Mexican. Same with Asian. When you're living in a land where a lot of times race is looked at with a big wide eye, you tend to see a lot differently. There are TV shows that talk about that. And like I said, I have dealt with it. And that's just stuff that you got to deal with. So when I give advice from experience, but I also give a silver spoon because some people, not a silver spoon, well, I give advice very lightly. I try to tread very lightly because just because I went through it doesn't mean somebody else did. So you do got to be careful about that. Now, number 2 is the second most obvious differences in individual and relationships, and that is the age difference. Now, on average, a normal age range for relationships is anywhere from a spread of 3 to 5 years. Most couples in this land, most couples in the world that has a little spread of age difference averages around 3 to 5 years apart. And now when you go beyond that, you turn around and get into a different level. It may not seem like it, but you do get into a different level. Let's go back to the example I used earlier. A 40-year-old guy meets a 28-year-old woman. Now, I'm 40. Woo! Yeah, I am 40 years old. And I have been through all these different types of relationships and everything. I've been through a marriage. I've been through kids and stuff. So I have some experience. I have finally gotten to the point to where now I can see from a mile away if something's going to work or not, and I act up on it. At one point, I would see that it didn't work, but I would turn a blind eye because I would look at the best in people. But as you get older and you start to learn your lesson, you start learning, hey, this person has the potential to be great, but until they see that, I don't see us working out. Stay off right away. I'd have been through the time of sitting on the phone, arguing for hours, trying to get a point across. They're trying to get their point across, and we're constantly going back and forth. And now I'm at an age to where we get to argue if we don't have our points across or whatever within 2 or 3 minutes or within a few minutes. I'm over it. I don't give a damn about losing an argument, because in my head, I didn't lose the argument. It's not about winning or losing anyway. It's about coming to an understanding. So I'm at that age. Now, when you get down to the 28-year-olds and stuff, at that age, I hadn't reached that point. I had got so bullheaded that I was like, no, you know what? I'm getting my point across one way or the other. You're going to listen to me one way or the other. And it didn't matter how long I argued. And it was crazy. I have seen people, I was working in a plant one time where I've seen somebody trying to work and stayed on the phone arguing with that other person for 3 hours. 3 hours. Are you serious? But that's just one of the scenarios, Now, sometimes, again, it depends on how they grew up, too. And I hate to and for all you ladies that went through molestation and rape and stuff like that at a very young age, I'm so sorry. I apologize that y'all had to go through that. That is BS. And the person that did that to y'all deserve very greatly to be in jail, beat down, killed, or whatever for taking your innocence and using it against you. And I am dead serious about that. That's a personal thing, but we're not going to go there right now. But anyway, I have met ladies has dealt with that at a very young age. And even though they've reached the age of 28, they still hadn't been able to work through that. They still haven't been able to live their life, move on completely from that. And it's very understandable. But a 40-year-old lady, most of the time, or a lot of the time, will have done work through that if it's done happened to them at a young age. Now, that's not the case all the time. Don't get me wrong when I say that. But a lot of times, that's what the situation would hold. Number 3, I got to say this and I'm going to take a break. Financial. One of the very top differences in individual and relationships is the financial background. Stable versus struggle. You can have a stable financial family and you date somebody that's had that and you and family that struggle, y'all have different viewpoints on things. 9 times out of 10, the stable person is going to be able to spend money and not even think twice about it. While you're sitting back, if you have struggled, you think twice about getting things. You try to live using every cent what counts. Now, I'm not saying that is the case all the time, but 9 times out of 10, if a person is financially comfortable or is financially stable, they're financially comfortable. And when you deal with somebody like that, they will spend money. I ain't say they'll spend it raggedly, because they may not, but 9 times out of 10 they will, and not think twice about it. Then your mentality changes. If you have struggled all your life and you haven't gotten to the point to where you're saving, you're going to keep your mind at that struggle. You'll always think that you're struggling, even when you're not. So you got to be careful with that. When you date somebody that's stable and you're struggling, then you got to come to a compromise and say, hey, this is where we're at. This is where we need to stay. You got to work on with each other. You got to look at your finances and you got to compromise. Can it be taught? Can you be taught differently? If you're financially stable, can you loosen up and say, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and buy that dress. I'm going to go ahead and get those shoes or get that haircut or whatever, because we're okay. Or are you always going to look at it as a struggle? Are you always going to look at it as, no, I better not, because this could happen? If you are on a struggle, can you sit back and say, if you've always been stable, okay, we're struggling, I need to stop buying this stuff and put it on a bill or this and that and other? That's what it means. Can it be taught? And I said I was going to take a break, but I'm going to pull off one more before I take a break. The cultural and environmental. The cultural and environmental difference. Another difference is cultural environmental. I put these together because sometimes, or a lot of times, it goes hand in hand. A lot of times it does. Look at country to country. The United States compared to Africa. Look at United States compared to Africa. Yeah, there's some similarities, but an African has a different way of doing things than an American does. One of the differences is that it's more prevalent in the United States, or is more free in the United States to be a LGBT whatever person or couple. Where Africa, they don't too much look at that. They kind of look down on that. I'm not saying that they're completely against, but they look down on it. From what my African friends have told me. The redneck versus the hood rat. And don't take me wrong when I say that. It's not like I'm using that in a derogatory sense. But if you come across a real country redneck guy and put them with a real hood guy, then will they clash? Can they be friends, or will it be different? It'll totally be different. Totally will. You're not going to see too many redneck guys dating no hood chick, because the cultures is completely different. Mexican versus American. You know, Mexico is not as financially, they're not financially endowed as the United States is. They live in more poverty than we are. Or at least that's what it looks like. I mean, the North versus the South. The North versus the South. I remember when I moved, again, this is a Chicago trip. I remember when I moved to Chicago. When I was in Mississippi, It was burning hot. I think I got used to the heat, 100 degrees, high humidity, all that stuff. I got used to all of that. You know, when it got cold, it got cold. It snowed some here, but you know, it is what it is. But then and went to Chicago, and I went around August or so. So it wasn't cold yet. It had gotten cooled down. But while all these people in Chicago was wearing their jackets and tightened up, all these people in Milwaukee, because I ended up going to my sister's in Milwaukee, wear the jacket tight, you know, wear the tight, talk about how cold it was. I was just walking around like, what are y'all talking about? It's not even cold. It's like 70 degrees was freezing up there to them. But to me, it was like, it was amazing. It was great. It felt so good. And I actually left out before a blizzard hit Chicago, but it finally did start getting cold. And it was a cold that I hadn't felt before. I was like, woo, this is crazy. Yes. I mean, cultural differences. When you talk about cultural differences, the things that people wear in Africa, you don't see much in the United States. Now you see some because some African people have moved up here. They keep their heritage because we're the land, quote unquote, of the free. But, you know, it's cultural differences. So when you get into dating with all of that, if I date somebody that's from African descent, I have to learn to compromise. Get used to some things. Get used to the way that they cook, because they cook differently than what we cook. You know what I'm saying? Redneck people, there's a lot of things that they eat that hood city people will not eat, and vice versa. Sweet tea in the South versus iced tea in the North. They ain't really heard of sweet tea like that. I mean, they have, but it's iced tea up there. And if you want sugar, you have to put it in your name cell. It's raining here, y'all. It is raining. So there is a lot of cultural differences when you're talking about dating. If you date somebody, let me get into this because I missed it a minute ago. There is a guy at my job, a 65-year-old man. He told me he was 65-year-old. And at my job, they got me doing light duty, so he's on light duty too. He's fighting cancer. Thank the Lord for helping him fight that, and he's going through that. Dude, I thank God for that. But we had a conversation and come to find out he has a Philippine wife, and she is 20 years younger than he is. And he said that in the Philippines, he lived in the Philippines for 40 years. For 40 years, he lived in the Philippines. And the thing is, he said he don't understand what it is, but Philippine women love to date older men, and I do mean that old. From what he says, he's seen a lot of that. I have my ex-tag team partner, my homeboy. He's not that old at all. He's younger than I am, and he's dating a Philippine woman. And he told me that that's just they look at men as a commodity, and if they're not married by a certain age, they're looked down upon. So they know how to treat their man. They try to keep their man. Now, I ain't saying this is the case all the time, but it is a case. But the thing is, him and his wife work. They work well together. They've been together for years. So when you find that compromise, and when you find what works for your relationship slash marriage, then you strive for that and use that, no matter what it is, the culture or whatever. Now I'm gonna take me a break because I am getting kind of hot. And when I come back, I will be finishing up the other differences. I will be finishing up the other differences. So I will be right back in a moment. Welcome back to Motivation Inspired. And to be honest with you, I am annoyed. I'm pissed because this will make like the fourth time that I will be recording this. But nevertheless, we are going to move forward and I am going to get this done because I promised that I was going to try to do this regardless, and that is what I'm going to do. So y'all just bear with me and just pray for me that I get better crap. Since I have recorded this like 4 or 5 times, my brain is not as it was before because I was focused, but now it's like I'm just getting through this. So y'all just bear with me. But the next one is called sexual preferences. And I just really don't want to get into this because this is a controversial subject. I have my opinion, but I'm just going to give what I got. But another difference, like I said, is sexual preferences. Obviously, a straight couple would have a different relationship than a gay or lesbian couple, and it's not just the physical. First off, I got a lesbian and I also have a gay friend. And one of the things that they emphasize is the fact that just because they're gay or just because they're lesbian doesn't mean they want every woman or doesn't mean they want every man. Uh, just because a man is gay doesn't mean every man interests him. I mean, just because I'm a straight guy, every woman don't interest me. And it's the same in the gay and lesbian world. Now, please don't get offended if I just say the gay and lesbian. I know there's pan and trans and demi and no labels and all of that. Please don't get offended, but it's kind of difficult to say lesbian, gay, trans, da 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 da, you know. So if I say gay and lesbian, don't take it the wrong way. I do mean all of that community. It just makes it a little bit easier for me to talk about it. But anyway, another thing is because a woman is female, they are naturally the hunted or the submissive ones. It's a natural thing. Regardless as if they're studs or not, it's a natural thing. Now, whether they act up on that is a different story. But a male is considered the hunter or the dominant. And whether they act up on that, that's a different story. But because it's naturally engraved in us to be that way, then for a lesbian, you see a lot of lesbians that say they want a girlfriend, or a lot of gay girls that say they want a girlfriend, yet they don't have one because naturally they are the hunted. And unless they're studs or stems that are dominant or whatever, most of the time women is not going to go after women. Now, that's not the case all the time because obviously one of the women have to go after the other, but that is the case. Same with men. A gay man, you see a lot of domestic violence and stuff. Think about two bulls that is trying to fight for their territory. If you got two bulls that are together, then what do you expect going to happen? So it's a lot of differences. There's a lot more differences. I mean, obviously, dating a woman would be different than me dating a man. That's obvious. Obviously, a woman dating me would be different than her dating a woman. And it's not just physical, there's different mentalities, there's different spirits, and all that stuff. So there is a difference. So when you get into the dating world and you prefer the same sex, there's things that you got to deal with that you would normally not deal with if you was dealing with somebody straight. I mean, it's just like black people that are dating is going to deal with something differently than white people that are dating. So you got to keep that in mind. Uh, the next one is behavior. This one is a factor that does not get discussed as a difference, but it is very much so. It is behavior. How someone was disciplined because of their behavior or their choices is a huge factor. Y'all hear me all the time talk about for every choice that you make, there's a consequence, whether good or bad. And here's the case here. If you're dating someone that chooses to deal with bad boys or bad girls, and all of a sudden you're getting their attention, they're naturally gonna want you to show that bad side. And vice versa, if you're used to dating somebody that's goody or goody two shoes, and someone that is bad is trying to show interest in you, and you decide to go that route, then obviously they're gonna want to see that different side of you. So you got to keep that in mind. The choices that you make. I mean, in my case, I chose to get married ahead of time, and now I'm divorced. So now I see things differently, and we'll get into that later on. This also goes for the strict versus the lenient. If you grew up in a strict family, then obviously it's going to be different than if you grew up with a lenient family. If you're a man that grew up in a strict family environment and you start dating a daddy's little girl that got everything that she wanted and nobody ever said no to her, then when y'all starting to get together and you say no about things, it's going to cause problems. So the way somebody was treated when they grew up has a lot to do with and what they choose, or the way they behaved, and the way they were disciplined. And that goes for kids as well. If you date somebody and you're a strict parent and you're dating somebody where the partner's kids are spoiled, then obviously you're gonna have a difference in that, and that's where compromise comes. You got to both be able to compromise, and that's the key thing is compromise. The next thing is experience. And I know you're thinking, well, you talked about experience and age. Well, see, the thing is, age got a lot to do with experience, but experience doesn't have to do with age. What do I mean by that? I had an ex girlfriend that had to take care of her disabled parents at the age from the age between 7 and 9, somewhere around there. So she had to grow up early and before her quote unquote time. She had to do a lot of the cooking and the cleaning and things like that adults would do for kids. So it affects her adult life today. I mean, yeah, it affected positively in one sense, because she already know what it means to take care of somebody. So that has a lot to do with it, but in a negative sense, because she never really had a childhood. So there's a lot of times where she could be childish because she ain't never had that. So somebody's experience doesn't have to do with just age. Somebody that was raped, it'd be hard, or molested, it would be hard for them. They would have trust issues 9 times out of 10. It'll be harder for them to trust somebody, whether it was out in the open or behind closed doors. So you got to keep that in mind. Somebody, if you had a temperamental family, a family that like to argue and cuss and fight and stuff all the time, if that's what you grew up around all the time, and you get somebody where the family didn't do that much arguing or anything, then it's going to cause issues. It's going to be a difference because you're not used to that. You're not used to that. And again, I said divorce, and what I want to mention about divorce, you know, I've seen the promised land. And what I mean by promised land is um, the American dream supposedly is the, you grow up, graduate school, go to college, make you some money, meet you someone, get married, start a family, and be happy. That's the American dream. Well, I got married and had kids and stuff, so I already been to the quote unquote promised land, which meant I done been there. But the relationship or the marriage didn't work out. So with it not working out, we got a divorce. And so now back in the dating world, when I got back into the dating world, things was different because my outlook on things was different because my expectations were different. Rather than somebody that has never been married is not going to look at the things the same as if somebody that has been married before. And I'm not going to get more into it because, spoiler alert, the next podcast is going to be dating after divorce. That is right. That is the next podcast, dating after divorce. Because somebody out there, and a lot of people out there have been through a divorce and doesn't know how to get back out in the dating world, or needs to know that the same thing that they're going through, somebody else has been through. So that is what my next podcast is going to be called. I Want a Divorce. That is what it is. So moving on, when giving advice about another's relationship, make sure that it comes close to matching the lifestyle of the relationship. And always make sure you express that it may or may not work for them. If I am married, then I should be careful with the advice I give someone that is single. Because yes, I have been single before I got married, but now that I'm married, um, or that I was married, I'm just saying in general, you know, it's harder for me to give somebody single advice because I'm not there anymore. Now I could give them advice on how to get to the point that I'm at now. Yeah, I could do that. But if I'm married and my boy comes up to me and he's like, man, I like this girl, but I also like this girl, and da da da, and I don't know what to do. I'm sleeping with both of them, and da da da. Then that's something I don't want to dip my wick in because I'm not at that point anymore. But if the guy is single and he's like, I'm trying to get serious with this person because I want marriage, then yes, I could give some advice about that because I'm married. So that's what I mean by you got to be careful. You got to tread lightly on what advice you give if the situation is not the same as the one that you're in. You got to tread lightly. You must find what works for you and your partner. That may involve talking to different people and doing or trying different things or doing some research. As I have stated over and over again, every relationship and every individual person is different. What may have worked for my relationship may not work for your relationship. What works for your relationship may not work for that person's relationship. What worked for me may not work for you. Now, I can give you advice, but when I give advice, you got to be the understanding person to realize, okay, I could try it, and if it works, it works. If not, it doesn't. Different people affect things differently. If your wife is temperamental, and then my quote unquote wife is a patient person, then I can't give advice on what to do to make your wife calm down because my wife is not like that. Different strokes for different folks. And just because somebody else's wife is temperamental and what works for them, it may not work for you. Different strokes for different folks. You got to keep that in mind. So you got to decide, you or your wife, you or your girlfriend, you and whoever you're dating has got to come to a point in your life where you say, okay, hey, this works for us. Hey, this does not work for us. You do that in your dating world, then when you take your next step, it makes things a lot easier. The key word to everything is compromise. When exploring differences, it is important to learn to compromise and establish what is important. You must also establish what makes you as an individual and as a couple, what made things better. With the kids, you both got kids and stuff. I said this in the last podcast, in the podcast with the kids. You got to compromise. You cannot let your kids ruin your relationship. You cannot. You got to decide what's more important. Is the relationship worth saving, or is it more important that you put your time into your kids? If it's not working by doing both, you got to make a choice. You got to do what's more important. You got to compromise on what is more important. Same with parents in a relationship. I dated someone one time where the mother felt like that she should be involved in our relationship, that no choice should be gone over unless she has her approval on it. I dated several women where their mothers was like that. But the thing is, when you're grown, you make grown up decisions. You got to make that decision. It is your responsibility to say, hey, I'm grown. This is my relationship, not yours. And you do what's best for your relationship. If you have parents like that, you got to be able to stand up and say something, especially if your partner feels like it needs to be done. I was watching Iyanla and Vant. I was watching one of her episodes, and the daughter had married another woman. The other woman was a stud, and her mother was living with them. And she didn't agree with it, and she was always getting into it with the stud. and it was just causing all kind of problems, and it was a mess. And what it boiled down to, Ayanla basically said that everybody's supposed to be in their certain lane. You'll have to find the episode to watch it. But it boiled down to the daughter was like, well, we need to help the mother find her own place because the daughter had been taking care of her mother. Her mother used to be a drug addict and still, I think, kind of was. I'm not for sure. But the daughter basically had to make the decision in order to hold on to her relationship that her mother had to move out, find her own place, and live her own life. And if that's what you got to do for your relationship, then you do what you got to do. Just because somebody's blood doesn't mean that you keep your ties. And I know a lot of people don't agree with that, but the point is, you got to live your own life. Once you're grown, you got to live your own life because nobody's going to live it for you. Because at the end of your life, the only judgment is going to be you. You can't go back and say, well, mother said this and Dada said that, but you made that decision. So that's what you got to do. If it's better for y'all to move, make that decision. You got to come to a compromise. Finances, if you're having financial issues, you got to come to a compromise. You got to figure out what is more important. That's the thing. Different people does things differently. Just because your homeboy, your homegirl, they moved and it worked for them, or they did this with their money, doesn't mean it might work for you. So that's why it's important to communicate with the person that you're dating so that y'all can come to an understanding. And that is all for today. And now it's time for the announcements. I have finally came up with a stable time to do my podcast. Now, I haven't had a specific day to do it because I did start off with one, but it doesn't work out like that. So basically, the first week of the month is when I'm going to be posting my podcast. By Saturday, I will be posting my podcast. It may be sooner, it may be Wednesday. It all depends on my work schedule and what I have going on. But if I have to do a 30-minute podcast talking about trees, I will be posting a podcast unless I announce that I will not be having one. I will be posting that podcast the first week of every month. So I got to give you time to look forward to something. And for those that can't subscribe or won't subscribe or whatever, if they know that I'm doing it the first week of every month, then they'll be more likely to pay attention. Also, keep an eye on my Motivation Nation page on Facebook for updates. And also, you can go to my personal page and I will have updates there. I don't too much add people I don't know on my personal page, so don't get offended by that. But I'm very big on energy and key and stuff like that. So please don't get offended. I'm still working. My time is about to run out, so I'm about to hurry. I'm still working out the kinks of my video podcast, but I will have updates very soon. I'm still working on it and time and stuff like that, but I'm getting closer to doing that. So just keep paying attention to updates and stuff. OWO Wrestling in North Pontotoc, Mississippi on September 23rd. Go to the OWO page for times and dates. I should be at that show if nothing else happens. I've been having a stroke of bad luck lately, so maybe I will be okay and I will be at that show. But so far, it's looking good. So far, it's looking good. So just go to the OWO page, the Mega OWO on Facebook, and the OWO Super Show page on Facebook, and they will have the updates. If you don't have Facebook, send me a message, and I will see if I can't give you an update. And our YouTube fan song of the month is an old school song, and it is actually the theme of this podcast. That's right, Different Strokes by Alan Thick. That's who it is, Alan Thick. So y'all check that out. That's the song I've been binging on YouTube. I know you're like, really? Yeah, that might be lame, but that is the song by Alan Thick. Different Strokes. There's different versions. Check it out. It may just motivate you to do things. We'll see. And as I mentioned, the next episode is real near and dear to my heart. It is going to be called I Want a Divorce. And we will be getting into the dating after divorce world. I really want to do this podcast because my experience really opened my eyes to some things. So, y'all check that podcast that I will be doing out. It will be posted the first week of October. So, check me out. And y'all, my time is about up. I got a few seconds or a couple of minutes, but I'm not gonna hold you because, like I said, I recorded this about 4 or 5 times, and so hopefully this will be the last time I'm recording this. But that is all for today. I want to thank all of you for listening and those that have been following my podcast. I want to thank you so much for dealing with this crappy audio sound and bearing with me. And hopefully, by the next podcast, I will be able to have some better equipment. I'm definitely working on it. Again, I want to say thank you, and I hope that today's episode and any other episode that you've listened to will help to motivate and to inspire your life one more time.